Our guest today is the chairman of the Illinois State Board of Education. He has served as chairman for over 2 years. The Illinois State Board of Education is responsible for the overall education of the students in Illinois. Listen to this. The Illinois State Board of Education administers more than 10 billion, B like billion, in funding each year for public schools. When our guest today served as president of the Chicago Board of Education, he was honored as Citizen of the Year by the venerable City Club of Chicago. Our guest today earned his Bachelor of Arts degree at the University of Illinois Chicago, UIC, and his law degree at Loyola. Ladies and gentlemen, Gery Chico. Gery?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jay Doherty, for the opportunity to speak with all of you today about a very important topic, and that is quality public education for all of our children throughout Illinois. I want to acknowledge several people who are here with me. I know Jay went through a laundry list, but there's a lot of people that are important to me and helping me to do what I do every day, starting with my wife, Gery Chico, who is my rock. Love you. Jay mentioned this individual a little while ago, but Chris Cook is an outstanding state school superintendent among the 50 states in the United States. Thank you, Chris, for everything you do. This chart behind me shows the members of the Board of Education. With us here today, we have 2 members of that board, Mr. Steve Guilford and Dr. Vinnie Hall. Thank you both for being here. When you do public service, and any of the people who are in the room that do it or that Jay has coming in the near schedule here, you know you need the help of the organizations that you work with. I'm very fortunate to be blessed with great colleagues at my firm who support the work that I do. When they see me wheeling my little bag out of the office to get in my car to travel to Carbondale, Danville, what the father said earlier, all those cities, we've been in them. I want to thank my colleagues for their support for allowing me to do public service. There's a number of educational leaders with us here today. I'd like to mention them briefly. I went to Kelly High School in Chicago on the southwest side, and today I asked to be with me the current principal of that school, Jim Coughlin. 3,000 kids every day this gentleman's responsible for educating. Jim? A little bit further south and west of that is the Sandoval Elementary School, and Anna Espinoza does a fantastic job as the principal of that school. I mean, these are the people that really, really make it go. You'll hear me talk about teachers in a moment, but we're blessed to have wonderful leaders like this. In addition to those 2, the Illinois Board of Education basically took over 2 school districts that were not functioning very well, and we called the question after decades of spending millions of dollars. In East St. Louis, Illinois, we took over that district. And I'm so proud of the members of my board had the courage to do that. And we asked Dr. Art Culver from Champaign, Illinois, to go become the superintendent of that district. And he's here with us today. I want to introduce Dr. Art Culver, the superintendent of East St. Louis Schools. Several charter school leaders here. I believe we need all of these things to make our mosaic work in Chicago. I want to introduce Mike Milkey, the head of Noble Charter Schools. Juan Salgado, the head of Instituto Charter Schools. And Fred Grillo with Aspira Charter Schools. Thank you for indulging me. Many of you remember me from my days at City Hall, where I would crisscross the city working on issues of crime, education, economic development, and job development. But today I'm here in the capacity as chairman of the Illinois State Board of Education. Today I crisscross the state of Illinois working with our state schools. And when Governor Quinn and I sat down in 2011 when he asked me to take this job, we talked about technology and the vast inequality that exists throughout Illinois with technology for our children. we can all agree that this should not exist. Today I want to talk to you about something that I believe will do as much for learning as anything that we've done in the last 100 years to help schools. I want to shift our investment strategy in education and eliminate the technological inequities that are helping to create the digital divide. We need to make this shift a priority and equalize educational opportunities for all students in Illinois. The days of being able to graduate from high school and go down to the plant and get a high-paying job that would allow you to take care of your family are long gone. For too long, we focused on getting kids ready to graduate from high school. That's not good enough anymore. We have to get kids ready to go to college and go immediately into the workforce at a level of preparation where they can get that good job that will allow them to support their family. Sadly, as it stands now, too many of our students leave high school unprepared for the rigor of college or to enter the workforce immediately. Here in Illinois, Jay touched upon this a little earlier, we have a vast system of schools. It's a very, very large network. In fact, it has the third most school districts of any state in the country, 860 districts. The districts are diverse, ranging from one of the largest in the nation, CPS, that educates nearly 400,000 students a year, to one of the smallest, Ohio Community High School District, with 33 students in Bureau County, about 120 miles west of here. We have urban, suburban, and rural districts. We have elementary districts, high school districts, and what we call unit districts, which combine both elementary and high schools. A student can have access to some of the most challenging curriculum in the world with a school that has a strong academic program like that right here in Chicago, Whitney Young High School. And my good friend Joyce Kenner, who's the principal of that school, is here with us today. Joyce, would you please stand? Outstanding education leader. Now, on the other side of what we have in Joyce, we have some schools which just have the bare minimum in their curriculum to graduate. That type of inequity is not fair to our students. And it's just not unfair to the students, it's unfair to taxpayers as well. We have wide variations in student funding and local tax rates across our state. The overall spend per pupil in our state can range on the low side from about $6,000 to over $25,000 spent by some districts on their pupils, and that depends on where the student resides. Similarly, tax rates can range from 2.3% to 15.3% of property's assessed value, depending on the location of the property and the taxpayer. Our school districts are also diverse in terms of students, teachers, technology, and other resources. Let's talk about Maine Township, a solid district academically and financially, not far from here in the northwest suburbs. You can go from classroom to classroom there, and teachers and administrators most likely will have graduate degrees and PhDs. They have a full technology department as well as solid infrastructure to provide students with sufficient access to 21st century learning. They have high-level hardware and wireless access, sufficient bandwidth to support the necessary learning across the district. Kids are going home after school there with iPads and doing their homework using state-of-the-art online programs. In rural communities like Olney in southern Illinois, home to the East Richland School District, the technology department is one, and that person has another job, curriculum director. But the board there yet remains very concerned about supporting their students with technology. They're investing on their own to ensure that their high school has wireless access and that teachers and administrators have the professional development needed to keep pace with their students' technological needs. But they struggle to meet that need, and they have to seek grants for technology or rely on community support and philanthropy. Today, everyone has access to a smartphone. Parent engagement used to mean the quarterly meeting, parent-teacher conference. We don't have to deal with that anymore. Today, we'll email you your student's progress on a daily basis if you want. You can communicate with your teacher on that basis. But not every rural community is like Olney. In some cases, the schools don't even have an internet connection. Or the one they have is that old dial-up, and that link is only to the superintendent's office. We all remember that screeching sound of the system trying to hook up via phone line to get a connection to the internet. That fax machine screeching sound. Technology in some districts is an afterthought. And in some of our urban districts, like Calumet City right here just south of Chicago, there is no technology department, and the computers and the infrastructure are aging and out of date. The internet connection they have simply doesn't have the bandwidth needed to provide students with the learning experience they should have. The teachers are doing the best they can, but they don't have the same resources as more affluent areas in our state. There is no electronic learning system that provides parents with a connection to their kids' teachers on a daily basis. Even though many of the parents have mobile devices, the school simply doesn't have the hardware and software to connect with them. We simply have to change the way we think about education. It's not chalkboards and textbooks anymore. Don't get me wrong, I love books. The Chicago Public Library has more than 6 million volumes. But today, a student with a device in their hands and connection to the internet can have more capacity than the Chicago Public Library, the Library of Congress, and the New York Public Library all put together. Kids today are more connected and more information savvy than we ever could have been, or we ever could have dreamed of when we were in college, let alone in high school. Think about it. They have more access to information than I ever did at the University of Illinois, thanks to search engines like Google. They know how to access information quickly, and they don't have to worry about being in a school building to do it. It's all in the palm of their hands. In fact, even my 5-year-old grandson takes my wife's iPad and zips around on the games right in front of us. Today, students produce content. They don't just consume it by rote memorization. Children need to learn and understand, not just repeat on autopilot. We need to change from the textbook-driven classroom and redirect to technology-based ones. We need to move from passive learning to active learning. This is what the new Common Core learning standards are all about. Teaching is being transformed and will be even more transformed into the future through tools and apps and programs and resources like the longitudinal data system that we are creating at the State Board of Education to help teachers monitor the progress of their students from the earliest years all the way through their career, or what we call the Shared Learning Collaborative, being built with Gates and Carnegie resources that will make it easy for teachers to figure out what pedagogical resources are there to help their students. One of the people that I asked to join me today is Jenny Majera. When I first met Jenny, she was teaching 4th and 5th grade math and science at the National Teachers Training Academy on the near south side of Chicago. And she was doing an awesome job with education technology, utilizing only iPads and a whiteboard to teach her 4th and 5th grade students. No textbooks in the class whatsoever. That allowed Jenny to not only see if her students' work was correct, but also to help her understand how her students approached a problem and identify not just that a mistake was made, but rather how it was made. Now she is the digital learning coordinator for the Academy for Urban School Leadership, a wonderful organization, and she coaches teachers on education technology. Jenny is the example of what we are after here. It can be done. Jenny, can you please stand? Jenny? Thank you. Students today, as I said, are not the same as when we were growing up. When I was growing up, I couldn't wait to get to school to play baseball and basketball. That's where we did it. We want schools today that students can't wait to get to because they're exciting, real world, and relevant to their world. If we can be successful at that, kids will come to school, truancy will go down, discipline issues will be fewer, and kids can stay in school longer and leave better prepared to contribute to our economy. Today's students live in a complex, rapidly changing world. Their education needs to be flexible to meet their needs. It needs to be real-time, creative, and challenging. It needs to compete with Halo, Grand Theft Auto, and Call to Duty, no games of which I play. But this is what we see the young people gravitating to. Just look at the stock of these game production companies. Their education needs to focus on collaboration, communication, creativity, and critical thinking. Exactly the things you look for when you hire. Improved access to technology moves us in this new direction and prepares today's student to be competitive in the world and the workplace. Spoiler alert. The vast majority of schools in Illinois are not prepared at this time to administer new online examinations, nor are they able to provide students with the online learning opportunities needed to develop 21st century skills. At the end of the past school year, the Illinois State Board of Education, as the slide shows, partnered with the Education Superhighway, a not-for-profit organization whose mission it was to ensure that all schools have access to good quality technology. And that is to allow them to perform online, and what they sought there was to take an online speed test among these districts. Approximately 60% of our school districts participated in that speed test, with the results showing that only 25% of the schools have the infrastructure necessary to participate in digital online learning and testing. In addition to this online speed test, this past summer, 82% of our schools completed an online technology readiness survey. Those results show that only 31% of the devices currently used in the classrooms have the recommended capacity to complete digital learning and online testing. If online testing occurred today, only 26% of the Illinois students that we looked at would be able to complete it. This is alarming, especially when we expect our students to begin taking their state exams online in the 2014-15 school year. There is an urgency here, ladies and gentlemen. Illinois is not alone in this paltry, in the paltry amount of money it spends on technology, but we are behind. Here in Illinois, we have a meager technology fund for our 2 million students that is about $1.2 million. We're behind Indiana. They're half our size and spend nearly twice as much, yet no one, including Indiana, is anywhere close to what we need to meet these needs, what they have to meet these needs. Starving technology funds are perhaps the most glaring funding deficiency in American education today. You wouldn't live without it, and neither should we expect our students in our classrooms to live without it. So what do? What we have done so far is stretch the dollar as much as we can. We have 6 technology assistance centers throughout Illinois that help provide districts with tech support, help teachers with professional development, but frankly, it's just not enough, ladies and gentlemen. We need to do more here, or we're going to really fall behind. As I said, we're pretty good at stretching the dollar, both as a state and as local school districts. In Bloomington, they partnered with other districts to provide shared technology services to each other. They realized that this was much more cost-effective, and it allowed smaller districts to keep up with the expertise and technology of the larger ones. This initiative is called the Illini Cloud, which provides technology services to hundreds of schools throughout Illinois and even beyond. We're now starting to look at other states. Technology needs for the 21st century, teaching and learning and assessments, can be broken down into 4 areas which you see before you here. We need to train our teachers in technology. We need to have proper broadband connection. We need to really build our technology infrastructure, and we need to make sure that our students are all outfitted with the proper devices to do their work on. If we're able to create a robust technology grant fund, we could begin the process of equalizing access to broadband between suburban, urban, and rural school districts. We would be able to run fiber optic cable to schools that would provide enough bandwidth so that students could interact real time, for example, via Skype with their peers in Asia and India. Imagine social studies taught that way. Or imagine being able to use those tools to link up with the Abraham Lincoln Library when you're studying the Civil War. It would allow for a reliable source of funding for schools to tap to ensure that they could replace aging servers and other hardware and wiring needed to maintain a secure and powerful network. Perhaps most importantly, it would mean being able to provide the professional development that our teachers need to use technology effectively in their classroom. Districts could put technology into the hands of every student. Instead of carrying a backpack home every night, it would mean simply taking home your laptop, iPad, or other device that can carry an entire library, not just a textbook. Let me be clear. Local districts do a great deal in this regard. They scrape, they scrounge, they reassign their budget. Even the federal government, through the E-rate program, gets involved to provide a lot of money. But it's not enough. It's just not enough. And the Illinois Constitution says that the state of Illinois has the primary responsibility to fund our public schools. So let's start doing it now, hard as it may be. So today I'm calling for Illinois to develop a $250 million technology fund that will allow us to bring our education system into the 21st century. I'm asking the legislature to approve a program that will allow us to give a huge shot in the arm to begin wiring our schools for the information age. Remember, we are in the information age. We need to make sure that every student in Illinois, regardless of where he or she lives, has access to a 21st century education, and that means access to technology. So how do we do it? First, we rethink our traditional investment in infrastructure. The old way, and there still is a need for this, was to invest in buildings. Build new school buildings, retrofit old ones, replace aging heating and air conditioning systems. These are all worthy investments. But we need to move forward with technology at the same time. Currently, there is $176 million in bond proceeds that remain from a school construction program. All of the schools that were entitled to monies up to a point in time have received those funds for their projects. What I'm proposing today is to reuse that money, take the remaining $176 million, and create a new Illinois Schools Technology Fund. It is time to better prepare our students to meet the needs of all of our children, and in turn, better meet the needs of Illinois. If we can ensure that our students are prepared to succeed in college and careers, we can ensure a sustainable economy for the next generation of Illinoisans. And if we need more money, we should pull it from the state budget out of general funds. And you might say, well, where's that going to come from? We're running substantially ahead of projections in revenue. Now, there'll be a lot of hands in there, Paul, asking for that money. But what priority should come ahead of our children and their future? The Illinois Schools Technology Fund will allow schools to get that broadband connection, be wired to meet the needs of a new and emerging set of technologies, and host a robust network for the business of learning to provide students with access to technology and training to teachers. We need to put devices into the hands of all our students. Eventually, by eliminating the reliance on textbooks, our schools will begin to sustain our students' technology needs. Just like you saw Jenny do in her classroom in 4th grade. Eventually, you will not have textbooks. It'll all be on an electronic platform. It's time we do more than just talk about education technology funding. I say today, let's take a step to provide it. Change is often hard, and too often the status quo, as we talked about a minute ago, will stand in your way against what is best to be done. But we cannot allow Illinois to get stuck in the mud when it comes to every student's right to a great education. As leaders in our business and civic communities, you are well aware that Illinois will not compete the way it should if our students aren't prepared for the jobs of tomorrow. Imagine Illinois trying to compete. Imagine the United States trying to compete if millions of students have never been properly taught to use technology, and this in the information age. My request to each and every one of you today is to engage and get involved and help support an initiative like this. We know that technology drives our economy. We know that today's students are tomorrow's workers and leaders. If we do not give Illinois students the tools to learn, we are setting Illinois and its businesses up for failure. No one wants that. We need to work together to take this common sense approach at implementing 21st century learning in our schools without any additional cost to the Illinois taxpayer. I want to thank you, Jay Doherty and the City Club, for allowing me to speak and bring this important message to each and every one of you. Thank you.
If you have any questions, raise your hand. We have City Club people there to bring them to the front. While we're doing that, Jay's list wasn't long enough. You know, he likes to cut it short. We have Mr. Education, Senator Art Berman. Art, raise your hand. Longtime state senator. Getting her firstest with the mostest. Christy Hansen, parent of 2 CPS students, and also a member of the City Club, so that's a double hit. What grade would you, oh, here we go. No sense in giving you a softball, Gery, you're used to this. What grade would you give personally to the Chicago public school system? Not even a warm-up, not even a peck on the cheek.
Well, obviously I'm a little biased here because I lived, breathed, and ate at that system for 6 years, along with a lot of colleagues, some of whom are here today. I saw Mike Mayo earlier. Paul Vallis was going to try to make it, but he got held up in Connecticut. And it's a really, really hard job. I don't mean to sidestep your question, but anybody who has the helm there, Jesse Ruiz knows this. This is not an easy task. With 400,000 students, 80% of whom live in poverty, you have an enormous task. You have an enormous task at hand. It's very, very difficult to see results overnight, and if the enormity of the challenge never escaped me. I mean, I probably visited 250 schools out of the 620 that there were in Chicago, and got a firsthand view of what people are up to. But let me talk about teachers again for a moment. Whatever we do as leaders in education pales in comparison to what those teachers do every day in front of their 20, 30 kids in those classrooms to bring them along. And that's the truth. And as long as we continue to get the best talent we can find to be in front of our kids, the future is bright. If we combine it with initiatives like these to give people like Jenny, that's her generation that is coming into these classrooms, with tools like these, there's no stopping our kids.
He's not a candidate. You give him a little leeway, okay? Tough crowd. I mean, Okay, we have Miles is that Mendoza? Close enough. We'll join the City Club. That's why we're reading this. Ed Choice, Illinois. To maximize EdTech's potential, policies such as credit being earned based on competency or the allowance of fractional per course funding, I know a lot of you understand that, must occur. What is the policy plan?
Our superintendent and my colleagues on the board talk about this frequently. We would like to have, I think we'd like to all have a day in the not too distant future when a student will go ahead based on their own individual performance. Some students are just zipping along, doing very well, but yet because of our calendar and our credit system, they're held back with the pack. And we need to be more forward-thinking than we presently are and provide a system, and this is not far away, I mean, we talk about this, where we allow that student to progress at their own pace. And that's one day what we will have. By the way, this will help. I don't mean to keep turning back to this, but this is the backbone of how we will measure how our students are doing. It'll take people like the teacher I talked about to tell you that student X or Y is ahead of the pack and should progress forward. In fact, in her class, students, because of the iPad instruction, can move on ahead of others. This is already taking place. Can move on ahead of others because they're not necessarily disturbing the other people. They keep moving at their own pace with a personal device. So the day will come when all of us are on that program, but it's already begun and happening in some of our schools now.
We have 2 questions left, and we're going to always get out of here at our time. Sean Healy from the McCormick Foundation. This is the easy one. Then we have another slammer to conclude. What is the ISBE doing to make sure seniors prepare, take two, to make sure schools prepare students for civic life? You make your own definition of what civic life means. This is Chicago. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I've always believed that part of the mission of schools is to prepare people for citizenship. And that means not only being courteous to your fellow person, that not only means being mindful of current events, but you know, I'm really troubled about the level of preparedness of our students in the area of civics. You know, Jay Leno only does this half in jest when he takes the microphone out there outside of his show and asks people who was Abraham Lincoln, and we stump a bunch of people. I mean, this is sad. So what we have been at work on here, our board again, is we have joined up, there's a lot of activities going on, but I think one bears specific mention. We have joined forces with the Abraham Lincoln Museum and Library to help develop curriculum for our social studies teachers. And they have been wonderful to work with our Deputy Superintendent, Susie Morrison, to put together rich curriculum that uses that wealth of information to help drive civics. How can you talk about the Civil War, the Emancipation Proclamation, without using that material? So I am concerned about this. I know my colleagues are. I know all of you are. We don't want people to just graduate and be able to do science, technology, engineering, and math and have no love for the arts, no love for music, no ability to relate in a modern society. I mean, Thomas Jefferson said it, people have to be educated to be full, meaningful participants in democracy. And that is a mission we have, and we pay attention to it. It's not easy because we crowd a lot of things in to the mandatory schedule that our teachers and students have, but we can do better, and we're on that case right now.
Using the moderator's prerogative to ask a quick question, those of us who a few years ago went to Chicago Public Schools, and either in 7th or 8th grade, we had to pass a civics test. Do we still do that?
Everybody has to pass a Constitution test in high school before you graduate, but civics, Paul, has waned a little bit, and we don't have to have that be the case. If you make education exciting for students, we won't just be talking about a civil war going on right now in Syria. We could actually program into it, and we could use it real time to engage people. I only mentioned those games partly in jest earlier, but if we take that kind of approach to really make the material that we're imparting to our students exciting and use exciting media to do it, we're going to go a lot farther. So we're not off of this subject, but we can do a whole lot better.
Okay. Last question from Michael Jacoby. Affiliation IASBO. Got that? Yes. Okay. You all got it?
School business officials.
School. I just read them, okay? Get ready. What will you say to the schools on the 2004 construction fund list who are to receive the $176 million you want to spend on something else? Welcome to the City Club.
That's a good. Not a question we were unprepared for. I mean, I'll say this: the same forces that brought about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in school construction have got to go back to work. This is not a one or the other proposition. We don't have that luxury. I put the data before you today to show you the state or the condition that we're in terms of using technology to instruct and take our exams. Superintendent Cook and his colleagues expect our students to be taking the, it won't be called the Illinois Standards Achievement Test anymore, but it'll be a similar program. They expect that to be done online. Why? We want to get back to the teachers, quicker results of how your students did. We don't want to wait 3 to 4 months. We want to have real-time information. We need this. But at the same time, Mike raises a very good question. How are we going to continue to deal with the facility needs of our school districts throughout Illinois? Well, Mike, as somebody who did $3.5 billion here in Chicago in school construction, I'm happy to tell you that I'm the eternal optimist about finding more funds to do school construction. I don't want to leave anybody with the impression that our job is over with school buildings. It's not. But I'm telling you, there is a critical need, an urgency to play catch-up with technology so that we don't leave children behind as they enter the workplace or go onto a college campus. I had an interesting experience, Paul. They asked me to teach a lecture at a course in University of Illinois in Champaign, an upper-level education course. And when I walked in, there's 30, 40 people around the tables, and immediately the laptops open up, and all you hear is, and I go, what the? This is not what I did when I went to college, right? I mean, everybody had pen, paper, and there was dialogue. This is the way the world is today. We cannot be sending kids to those university campuses without the ability to know how to use those tools. And that's what this is about. Mike's question is an excellent one. I assure him we don't mean to ignore the capital needs of our schools, and we're already thinking about ways to generate more money to deal with our school buildings.
How about a round of applause? Great